Hey, I'm Shaun Sharabi, and in this episode, I sit down with Sunny Ilyas, founder and CEO of Vale. He's got 10 locations, on his way to 100, multiple 8 figures of revenue, has just came out with his own protein product, and this dude hasn't raised a single dollar. This guy is an absolute machine. Vale is a healthy, fast casual restaurant that is taking over Florida. I hope you enjoy the show. I'm your host, Shaun Sharabi, and today I have none other than my good friend, Sunny Ilyas. Sunny, welcome, brother.
I'm here, ready to go.
Let's roll.
Happy to be here.
Take us to the beginning a little bit. I know you've kind of had this passion for healthy, tasty food. What did you feel like at the time was missing in the market back when you started this? Because there was already healthy, fast casual restaurants around.
Yeah, for us, for the most part, growing up, the first one that came to mind was Chipotle. I was like, okay, I want some fresh proteins and rice and some veggies.
Totally.
And what I noticed, going to school in Tallahassee was definitely a smaller town, so it was a little later on getting some fresh forward concepts. And we definitely were in a huge need for some sort of healthy, convenient option.
Yeah.
There was, when I was going to school there, we just got a Chipotle in between those years from 2009 to 2013. And we didn't even have a Whole Foods in the town at that point, either.
Yeah.
So
I also remember that Chipotle. I was on Tennis. I think there was like 2 of them.
Tennessee Street.
And it was like 10 times out of 10, it was always slammed. It was always crowded. It was
Correct.
like college kids being like, oh, I can have something healthy nearby. Yeah.
So for me, I saw, I was going to school. I was a pre-med major, exercise physiology. I was working, 2-3 jobs supporting myself, going to school. And of course, trying to lead a healthy lifestyle myself. And I was noticing from my peers and friends, a lot of people had the same problem of, I wish I just had healthy food that was convenient, that was meeting my budget, but had enough variety. And I always heard this pain point, I hate having to cook, or a lot of college individuals do not understand how to cook, at all. So they go to school and you have these brilliant minds that are going to school and they're becoming doctors, lawyers, and everything in between, and they don't know how to cook. Yeah. So I saw this all around me, and I kind of had this aha moment of I think I can solve this problem. And for me, my kind of drive to become a doctor was always rooted in wanting to help people. And I wanted to really try to help people and connect with people in that way. But I always thought it was a little sad. I was like, man, doctors have to wait 8 years to make an impact, on someone's health or helping people. I was like, I don't think I can wait that long. I want to make an impact now. And I looked at it and I was like, it was also pretty sad. As a doctor, you usually see a patient when a disease has begun or started. Yeah, there's screenings and things like that where doctors prevent. But really, I wanted to be on the side of prevention via food, and really, nourishing people with ingredients and nutrients that are going to help support vitality and longevity versus what people were getting, which were food that was destroying them from the inside out.
Right, because oftentimes, usually I feel like, and there's been a little more of a shift over maybe the past decade, but the medical space has been very reactive, and by that time, it's hard to kind of rewire everything, and many times the things that we're putting in our body is kind of the core of it, can help. It's not the silver bullet, but it's very influential to it. So the thought process of still same intention of helping people, but in this, in a more maybe fundamental manner of let's give them some good food to put into their body.
Let's put some good food, and then, and understanding that America's plagued by 4 diet-related diseases, and that's, diabetes, eating disorder, heart disease, and I'm not coming with the 4th one top of mind, but we have a lot of I said diabetes, but we have a lot of diet-related diseases that are here, and it's a known thing, throughout the world, that it's that America is plagued by this and it's rampant. So I want to be a part of the solution to really fix it and really nourish our communities around Florida. So that's why I jumped around from Tallahassee to all the way South Florida, is because I felt like, okay, let me make my impact in this state first.
And what was I guess, how would you describe and define healthy, right? Because I feel like that's also there's healthy, fast casual, but healthy is pretty broad as well. So what, what's your description and measurement of that maybe?
That is a really good question, and I think healthy is personal, right? my definition of health is different than yours, and vice versa. And everyone, like, how I lead my life, like, I look at healthy on a scale of 1 to 10, and 10, being like, when you wake up, you feel good. When you eat food, you should feel nourished and good. And like, you shouldn't be feeling these like slumps throughout your day, right? And like, you want to be, when I think of, health, I feel like you want to be able to be consistently operating at a high level every day and not feel like, oh, I'm constantly getting sick, or I'm not, even if you get a little bit more analytical, and you get your blood work done and you look at your measurements of your body and your visceral fat versus your muscle percentage and things like that. Everyone has their own definition. My mother, she drinks tea and she goes on walks. To me, that's healthy.
Totally.
She does that. So like, the word healthy has kind of gotten lost in translation, but I think that's personal. What healthy is for me, I don't think I necessarily need to push that and prescribe that life specifically on people. But what I do is I look at what are the main things that I feel like are very impactful for me, and how can I input that into my brand to help people start leaning towards a healthy lifestyle.
Yep. And so in thinking of that, is there a specific niche of like people that you would define as your customer base, or could it really be kind of anybody?
I think we're everyone, and I would say my Jacksonville store is probably like my best testament to this, because we opened in Jacksonville. It was one of our first metro market stores outside of college markets. And we thought, hey, this is just food for working, young working professionals or college students. And then we went to Jacksonville and we saw, wow, our most loyal customers were also elderly. We're also, different demographics of all different backgrounds. And it really led me to like kind of open up who is my target audience and understand that, Vale should be a brand for everyone. So even on a scale of healthy, or our food and how we cook and everything, on a scale of 1 to 10, we don't go extremes. We want to really be living in a world where we're like a 7, 8.5 on health. We can have customers who want a 10 out of 10, health, and come and eat extremely clean and lean at Vale, but we don't want to intimidate people, with our food.
Totally.
We want all people of all backgrounds to be able to walk into our restaurant and have an option for them.
Yeah. I think the other downside is, I feel like a lot of the healthy space has developed this kind of fear-based model of influencing, and I think that comes from, to your point of like, they go the extreme, right? It's like, here's all the stuff that you like, you should never eat, or you absolutely can't eat, and it's like, that's not reality, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's not sustainable.
That's not
either.
life.
Yeah.
That's not life. That's not how people should live, with like restrictive diets and like super extremism. Yeah. Like, when you look at this world, anything on the extremes is usually, there's probably some cons that are coming with that.
Totally.
Right? So like, for me, I always say to people, Vale was built for the 99%, not the 1%.
I like that. And so, okay, you built up these different stores. Now, from a I guess revenue stream standpoint, there's obviously the in-store dining. Talk us through the different revenue streams, I guess, that exist.
So, initially we started out, with having a meal plan delivery business as its own revenue stream. Then it has in-store dining.
Yep.
Then as we started third-party delivery with Uber Eats and DoorDash started emerging. So we were a part of that entire process in the beginning. And now that sector has turned into 30% of our business,
Oh, wow.
To where we're doing a significant amount of revenue. And then the fourth revenue stream is primarily catering, where that's our more B2B side of the business, where we're working with corporations and, different types of, clients. And for us, we feed primarily the medical space. We feed about 100 medical practices every month. Cool. We do a lot with athletics all throughout the state of Florida. And then we do a lot of corporate catering as well.
And do you value each revenue stream equally, or do you put more weight on one over the other?
One of our, the ones I would say that is a vital focus for us. All of them are vital because they, I look at it as like, these are all my guests.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we want to make sure these guests are getting an extremely high level of execution and experience. And there's, other ones, there's some that are easier than others. But for us, the one that we really emphasize heavily, and we are making a huge push this year on, is in-store, is really making sure that we're connecting with our guests and we're making that experience as elevated as possible. So we're actually trying to shift our brand perception and our consumer eyes. And instead of them viewing us as like, oh, there's another option versus Chipotle, we want to be so significantly higher when it comes to hospitality and the experience that we're in our own land of like a premium fast casual.
Interesting. And where's that coming from? Why is that important to you guys?
I think it's important because when people view fast casual, they kind of view it as like, okay, I'm gonna come in, grab my food, and take out.
Yeah.
Right? And we're just a brand with a lot more depth than that. Like we really, we're probably one of the only fast casuals that we cover so many different categories where you can come in for a protein shake, a smoothie, an acai bowl, a avocado toast, a coffee, a matcha, a bowl, a salad, a wrap. We cover so many categories that we really want to be that all-day cafe for our communities where people can come in and they can get, I would say we're shifting towards a brand where we have a little bit more wellness component built into it, where people are coming in when, hey, I don't feel too well. Like I need a ginger shot. I need this. They're coming to us looking for some sort of food prescription. Versus just looking at us as like, hey, I just want a quick meal and take out. But also when we look at it from our peers, they're not focusing on the guest. And we're looking at that as a massive opportunity because when I look at it is that we're living in such a crazy digital age where people are watching this on their phones. People are constantly kind of removed from human connection.
Right.
That those moments where guests are coming into our restaurants, we want to amplify the human connection. And we want to lean into that. So as our competitors are leaning into AI and screens and kiosks and things like that, we're doing the opposite. We're leaning towards the human experience because we feel like that will allow us to build the relationship with our guests, but also build the life cycle of the guests, and actually grow them, and grow their value proposition at Vale. We want them to look at Vale, instead of hey, like, should I go to Chipotle or go to Vale? Let me go to Vale because like this is a concept, this is a brand I can trust with the food quality, and also that they have the best, their corporate is in the best interest of my health versus the bottom line, or not looking at it, differently. So for us, we just look at it as like it's a way better way to build our community by, being that well connected and focusing on the guest. But I would say as well with catering, it's catering, you have to be 100%. As people have meetings, they start at certain times. Like our food has to be there, has to be hot, has to be ready. There's a 0% margin for failure. And not a lot of people can do it, but I've been doing it for 12 years, so we have a little bit better, systems and processes. But to me, like that's one of my favorite, parts of the business as well, because you have to be as close to perfect as possible.
I guess so. I actually want to dig into that a little bit more. So you mentioned your competitors leaning more into maybe some of the technological aspects. I'll maybe play devil's advocate here. Like I think one of the most important things of food, especially in this healthy, fast, casual space. Even when I think of the biggest ones that aren't healthy, but like a McDonald's, for example, the thing that people always think of is like consistency, right? It's like, doesn't matter what McDonald's you go to, you'll basically get the same thing. And when I think of leveraging technology in the food space, two of the pros that come to my mind, is consistency. And then the other element is, labor, like the labor cost aspect, right? Like there's obviously some upfront investment for it, but how would you maybe with you guys leaning kind of the other direction, does it not leave you a little concerned of like other people basically able to do it at a lower cost in a more efficient manner?
I mean, there's always a factor of that, right? And like for us, like we ultimately, all of our restaurants, we live and die by the quality of people that we hire and we train and we develop representing our brand in our restaurants. So we're very people-centric and wanting to give them the best, to represent us as well, and also lead them to be successful. But ultimately, you can go to other restaurants and they may, have a lower price, point than us. They may have certain other things that they're cutting, to bring more to the bottom line. But for me, I think that from a consistency standpoint, our restaurants run better when we have, better people on the floor and we're focused on that. So I'd rather pay a little bit more to ensure that the consistency is going to be there over a long-term time horizon. I had a customer today who came in and she's a snowbird from Canada. I've been feeding her for 5-6 years. She comes down to Fort Lauderdale, she goes, plays tennis, comes to my restaurant. First thing she said to me today, she's like, it is still as consistent as it was, 5 years ago. And that was music to my ears, hearing those type of things. But I told her, I said the same thing I say to all my guests, it's going to get even better. We want to constantly evolve the brand. And when our customers come in and our guests are investing, their dollars with us and trusting us with their food, it's an intimate, thing. I view it as a huge responsibility to make sure that our food is always on point for them. But I do view them as like, hey, those are our shareholders. Those are the people investing in our company. And we need to bring new things to them. We need to evolve and constantly become a better company. And a lot of my long-term customers and friends have seen the brand evolve and have seen it get better year over year. So to me, I'm hoping that compound work is going to really separate us from our competitors.
Yeah, and I guess I think the more we as a society shift to digital and so on, I think there is going to be more value. Like the human connections are going to be even more precious, right? And I think of like when I go to a restaurant, part of the thing I'm looking forward to is the like community social like bond, right? I guess maybe this is this kind of you guys wanting to not like move the identity away from just like you're saying, just come in, grab your food, and we're facilitating, like we're giving you a healthy lunch, to more of like an experience element of it? Is that how you see it? Like more intention in that sort of that aspect?
I mean, we definitely want to. I don't think like we're gonna be, like I said, going and doing it on an extreme level, but we definitely want to elevate ourselves to where it's significantly noticeable the value you get out of Vale versus our competitors. So we want that to be night and day, to where, hey, when you come in, there should always be so many positive little experiences to where you leave happy. And for us, like, that's the most important factor, is we want anyone walking through our doors to be leaving happy. And that's going to be through us being intentional with what we're, directing our stores to be doing to take care of the guests.
Yeah.
So,
And I guess so on the guest side right now, what portion of the business comes from in-store versus third party versus cater versus the different streams, roughly?
I think it's still over 50% 55% is coming in store.
Got it.
I would say anywhere from 25-30% is coming from the third party.
Got it.
And then the rest is really coming in on catering.
Got it. Also catering's a pretty solid.
It's a pretty decent amount. I think it's a sleeping giant. I think it can be something that we can really grow even more.
Yeah.
Because like we said, we live in a very, very busy age where people are working 2 jobs. People are working longer hours than ever. And I always tell our working professional families, you don't have to cook 21 times a week to prove you know how to cook.
Yeah.
Let us take it off your hands, for a couple of nights, and we have some great options for families as well.
Yeah.
And actually this year we have evolved, and we're opening up a new line of products that are really targeting the 4 to 5 people, items versus 10 to 12, which was obviously targeted over larger groups.
Right.
So that's been a really that's an exciting thing for us to be working on.
And is so I would think, like, when I think of restaurant and food, probably one of the most telling signs is your repeat customers, right? Like I'm someone that when I find a good product, a restaurant, I'm like, I'm telling everybody about it. I'm going back countless times. So how do you guys look at that a lot? Are you able to track that data well? How does that factor into kind of your analysis?
We have a strong retention rate with repeat customers. I would say easily, our customer base is well over 70%, repeat, customers who are coming into us every week. I have customers that they eat at my restaurant for lunch and dinner every single day, because they're just like, economically, this makes more sense for me. And they like how they feel.
Yeah.
And that's the one biggest separator between us and a lot of, concepts. When it comes to how you feel after, you're never going to eat my food and feel tired or exhausted, because we have such a better balanced approach with how we put salt, sugar, any, type of oils in our food. We're really focused on balanced nutrition. So when people eat our food, they get addicted to feeling good. They get addicted to stable energy levels. So they keep on coming back for that same feeling. And I hear that over and over and over again, and our guests, once they, they get used to that, it's just something that, it's a no-brainer for them.
Yeah.
But it's one of my favorite parts of the business. I mean, I eat my food every day.
Yeah.
I'm still not sick of it. When I get sick of it, I create new stuff.
Yeah. That's a good test. And is from those different streams, so you said 70%, which is massive. Are you, is that data that you guys actively look at? Is it easy to track and aggregate?
Yeah, we can track it through credit cards.
Yeah.
So essentially, sure. We can see how often this credit card, comes back and things like that, and we can pull those reports. But it really has been, I would say it's we have a pretty loyal client base who comes in, and for us, we want to stimulate them more and try to figure out more ways so where we can provide value. For me, I think that's the biggest thing is what is the value proposition? What's separating us from other competitors?
Yeah.
And that is going to be in the details of the business and constantly creating new things that are going to excite them. And, I would say bring more items into the concept that's going to really be what the guests are looking for.
And across the different streams, are margins, do they vary significantly, or are they relatively consistent?
For sure. I mean, so obviously through revenue streams, third party, we're getting dinged, anywhere from 20+%.
Well, that's significant.
Where they're taking those commissions. And then, so for us, the third party space, we don't make the highest margins on those, but it's an amazing gateway to acquire new customers and guests for them.
Also, it has an acquisition cost.
Exactly. It's like our cost to acquire a customer. And we look at that as a great marketing tool for a young brand like ours. And even though we've been in business for 12 years, we still view ourselves as a very young brand in the eyes of general population knowing about us. So we look at it as a marketing advantage as well. But our margins, and pretty much if I were to categorize it, we have the highest margins in catering, then it's in store, and then it would be the third party and Uber Eats.
And on the marketing side, so you mentioned it through the third party, what else have you found to be your most effective marketing strategies?
I mean, for us, we are now doing so much volume on these platforms that we have more of a premium, relationship with DoorDash and Uber. So jointly, they're motivated with us to obviously grow our business because they want to obviously do more revenue and get more commissions too. So we have developed more strategies. We've done things like doing buy one, get one offers on items and categories. We specifically utilize it on new categories that we want to establish with the guests. So we rolled out wraps last year, and it's been a huge success for us. And what it did when we put it on BOGO, it really helped us get a ton of wrap orders, which also helped my staff get trained on it, which also helped the guests get educated and get a super value proposition to it. I'm getting two for the price of one. But we were able to get a deal with Uber and DoorDash where they covered a portion of that secondary item.
Oh, interesting.
So we didn't eat all that cost. So
and they're motivated to do that if they see that you're more people are ordering Vale, so they're we'll put a little money behind this to give people to taste this new product because net that'll give us more. That'll give us
overall they're getting more orders, and that's what their true motivation is. But it's also for them, they don't want to have the guest have a negative perception of Uber Eats or DoorDash.
Yeah.
Because so many people, they go on these platforms and it's oh my God, I'm spending $50, $60. And so for the value proposition to be increased in their brains mentally, I'm getting 2 items, I'm getting 3 items, it's just fine. The premium's fine because I'm getting more than what I normally get.
And do you guys, it makes sense on those. What about paid ads, things of that nature? What, any of those kind of marketing strategies you guys have really
We've had a mixed bag of results with doing that on the third party platform specifically. It's sometimes it's effective, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it takes a longer time to really see the return on doing the advertising on it, but it's good to stay top of mind, and really have them pushing your brand and their algorithm of their carousels and things like that through their app. But I mean, ultimately that's been a little tougher to measure, but overall I would say it's mildly effective.
Yeah, got it. So the most successful ones have really been leaning in with those
the promotions, and the value, getting more value for your dollar.
Yep. So you mentioned this a little bit earlier. I guess expand on it more. There's, we've mentioned Chipotle. There's obviously like, Sweetgreen's a big one. There's some smaller ones around, definitely in like the South Florida market.
Yep.
What I know some of them are leaning more into technology and so on and so forth. But what would you say like separates, one from the other? But more specifically, where have you been able to? Where do you feel that you guys have been able to find your like separation from some of these other players?
So I feel like Kava and Sweetgreen specifically, like they really ran at the Chipotle model a little bit, where they're owning their category, right? Sweetgreen, excellent for salads, right? They got some good salads. Kava, Mediterranean. They're really, the Mediterranean Chipotle. They've convinced Wall Street on that. They've convinced everyone on that, and they have a good product. But they just do that, and they do it really well. We're really trying, we look at them as like they're running with what I call the first generation of fast casual, right? We are the next generation of fast casual, where we're the concepts that are really the community, I would say, like I said, a concept for the community, the all-day cafe, where you can come in and you're going to be getting, a multitude of different variety of options that you can come to and get. Like, if I want a salad, you can go to Sweetgreen, but if you want a smoothie, you cannot.
Yeah.
If you want anything else, if you want to go with a group of friends and everybody gets their own categories of different things, you can't go to them. They're a little bit more, focused on that, on their primary, offering. And I think that's good. There's definitely
It's a good business strategy. Oftentimes is saying,
of course, just
focusing on
stay
your
super
specific line,
relentlessly focused on one thing and do it extremely well.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm a little different in thinking. I think that maybe it's because my age is similar to my target market and my customers as well. But I look at our generation, the next generation of consumers, and what has been really the longest the longest successful businesses, in my eyes, has always been one-stop shops. You look at Walmart, you look at Amazon, you look at these concepts, these companies, right? Why do people shop at Walmart or Amazon? It's because they can get everything there. And people throughout history have always been, I would say, more loyal to places where it's a one-stop shop, where they don't have to go to so many different concepts to get what they need for their family or themselves. So for me, I want to build a brand where people can, enter a Vale, whether it's ordering from us online or in store, and get whatever they want when it comes to the, being a one-stop shop for healthy food.
Yeah. I feel like those many times, though, I think one thing that's unique with what you're doing, oftentimes I feel the strategy of like, you do one thing really well, people come to know you as that, and then you add something else to the mix, and then you kind of like, you prove yourself in one, then you add another, then you prove yourself in that. You guys are kind of like, here's all the stuff that we do, and we're gonna try and prove ourselves in basically all of these different things, right? I guess do you feel like that strategy has been has worked against you at all?
For sure. And I'll be the first one to say it. Trying to be excellent at many things is tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough because like you're also trying to distinctly do it differently than everyone else.
Right.
Because you want to have a wide array of products and offerings where people can only get it at your place. I think I wrestle with this at times. We want, when people ask me, hey, like, what is separating you from other concepts and stuff? I'm always running at proprietary. I want flavors. I want menu items. I want things that you literally can only get with us. And like, you can say, well, Sonny, everyone has a chicken Caesar wrap, right? But like, you want to do certain things in such a uniquely way where they don't have it in that way.
Right.
And for me, I'm always running at proprietary. And I think maybe in the last year or two, I've also wanted to incorporate a little bit more of the classics of culinary and infused into the concept. So we're not so extreme on, one way of only doing things, in a obscure way, I guess. But for me, I've always been trying to build that customer loyalty through proprietary items of like, you can get a chocolate chip cookie anywhere. You can't get a Vale chocolate chip cookie anywhere.
I like the focus on proprietary. Well, in that vein then, are there companies in your, competitors in your space that you think are doing something interesting and you're impressed with what they're doing?
I mean, look, I would say out of all like the big players, Sweet Green is definitely doing some incredible things as a brand. I think how they scale, how their marketing is built and everything. Like they've done so many incredible things. I mean, I've been following fast casual brands for a long time, and like they've always been like the leader when it comes to like marketing, branding, and like certain cool things that they're doing to like how they made a salad brand sexy is crazy. Like,
Seriously.
like it's crazy to
Yeah.
me. But I have a lot of respect for them because like they're younger guys who like really have been trying to break the stigma of like salads being kind of boring to eat.
Yeah.
And like I thought they did a really excellent job at that. I've seen some other brands, here locally in South Florida. I think Pura Vida's done a really excellent job of how they've kind of gone about their scale and their growth. And I have a lot of respect for, what they've done. I think that we are very different in many ways from a culinary standpoint, but how they approach their target market, I think is excellent. And they've done a really good job at that. So I can't really not, I think that they're, what I think that they've done that's, very special is that like, they know exactly who their target market is, and they're going 100% relentlessly at them, and that's something that is very unique. We're very different. We're targeting 99%. They're kind of targeting the opposite.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit, get more into the like operational side of the business. So maybe start us with the supply chain side. Like what are whether it's specific like suppliers, distributors that you use that you want to talk about, or if you want to more so go into like maybe the biggest risks that you've seen in the supply chain world. Because when I think of food and especially this type of business, like that's probably one of the most intimidating things. Like if I were to get into a business like that, that's one of the most intimidating things. So yeah, what's the biggest risk that you see in that space?
I mean, the hardest part is when you're trying to do like healthy food is still new in restaurants, right? This is a newer category, for restaurants in general. So from a supply chain availability of ingredients, it's tough when you're asking to get things in restaurant wholesale pack sizes and things like that. It's like just now, maybe, I mean, even, this year, like our supply chain is a constant work in progress, trying to streamline it and make it easier for our restaurants to get certain ingredients. It has been challenging, that's the truth. And I'm sure it's challenging for all my peers in healthy fast casual restaurants too. That's probably a point of why maybe some of the ones we talked about, Kava and Sweet Green, has stayed in their niche because supply chain is so dang difficult. But for us, I think that, we use like massive broadliners. We use Cisco, who is like the largest, supplier, throughout the nation. One of the, things like Cisco has gotten bad feedback over the years, but in my opinion, like they're the most sophisticated. They have also the largest national reach, in terms of scale. So if we wanted to scale to 100 units, they could.
Is their scale, you feel like their biggest differentiator, or what do you think is their biggest?
Probably their scale, and also the fact that every time I go to a food show, every single, even like if it's a unique product, they're like, oh yeah, we can stock with Cisco. We're already set up with Cisco, and they lean in with that, because so like for us, we'd rather work with them, and they have been very helpful with getting certain products and things, but it's still clunky. They have warehouses and opcos of getting these products in, and then they have their own business model with how they operate. So there's, it's a constant battle of supply chain, and it is 10 times tougher than people think,
So how do you manage it? How do you?
I mean, I have a director of culinary who primarily manages all of our supply chain. I'm also extremely hands-on with it to make sure that like the ingredients and the quality of spec of what's coming in meets my standards and the brand standards. But it's a constant work. We have standing, monthly meetings with supply chain to make sure that we're moving the needle and making it work for our restaurants better. And we're confident that this is going to be like the year to where we can, I would say, get to about like 85%, 90% like, efficiencies, throughout our supply chain. But,
just a lot of, I guess, staying like super focused.
You got to stay on it. If you take your eyes off of it, trust me, like, it will not improve.
And that's also, to your point, that's also probably the benefit of like, having a more focused in menu is there's less variables, so there's less potential ingredients that could have an issue with it. So you're up front, you're making it even more difficult for yourself.
Yeah, I'm fighting right now to get my grass-fed collagen. For my supply chain. It's like no one else is asking for this product. So it's unique because I'm asking for like very new cutting-edge ingredients, very health-centric stuff that none of my competitors may have. But it's just trying to get that built in with your supply chain can be cumbersome.
And how is your relationship with them adapted since you've gone from 1 to 10? And how do you see it changing when you get to 20, 30, 40? I'm
having flashbacks because when I opened my first store, you don't realize you're getting robbed. The first person selling you food is, you're one store, person. They're selling you at the worst prices that you can possibly get. And you don't realize it because when you open your first store, you're juggling 100 other things. And it's so messed up. The whole system is broken. It's kind of like a car dealership salesman, that's preying on like a first-time car buyer, right? Or somebody with bad credit or something. They're like, you're getting ripped off. So for me, throughout the last 12 years, we have worked with many suppliers before Cisco. Even with Cisco, we've had some turbulence at at times, but now we have master distribution agreements with them where we have locked in margins of what they can upcharge, and like what margin they make on our ingredients and products, and we have more of a balanced deal between organizations. And like now it feels like okay, we're on a level playing field here, and like we're both invested in the betterment of my business and my business growing because now they view us as a strategic account.
Yeah, instead of just a small shop.
Exactly. Like if you're a mom and pop, you're getting cooked.
Yeah. And okay, so I guess now when you look at the full stack, what about when you're managing, your cost structure and you're taking into account the suppliers and the actual raw ingredients and so on, what else, like talk us through the rest of maybe that cost structure? Obviously there's the food costs, the labor and so on, but how does that stack up?
Definitely. Rent. Our rent, our overheads, we're in very prime markets. So, and some of our, restaurants are bigger where those rent structures are larger. We have to factor those things in where we may get 3% increases annually in rent. We may have to, also have 3% increases on food, and what we, outlay to the guests. But ultimately, we're when you look at food costs, labor has probably been the most expensive in the last several years, like since COVID. I significantly remember I was like, man, this has really taken a leap. I remember when I first started, we're paying people $9-10 an hour, whereas now it's the starting floor is at 15, and it's increased, pretty significantly. So that has played a big part of it. But I would say, probably since COVID, everything has just gone up, but obviously we have rent, utilities, obviously the infrastructure of the entire restaurant. There's so many other costs that goes into running a restaurant that so many people don't realize,
And do you, what are maybe the when you're looking at managing this business on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and you're going back through your financials, the operation, what are those KPIs that you're really digging into, and how are you, Sunny, as the owner, measuring the success of this?
We go through KPIs all the time. For us, it's a weekly tradition to go through food costs, labor costs, our packaging costs. Those are the big three KPIs. We're going
food,
through
labor, and packaging.
Yeah, food, labor, packaging costs. We're going through reviews. We're going through what's our average guest ticket. So how much on average is someone spending when they come into a Vale? We're looking through so many different KPIs. What's our turnover rate on a restaurant level? I would say in general, the KPIs, if you don't know them, it's going to destroy you.
Yeah.
You really got to be dialed in and moving in a positive direction. And, luckily for us, like we've been year over year moving in a really strong direction on keeping those KPIs under control and moving them in the right way.
And where have you seen, either for you guys in certain locations or where have you seen your competitors, like what KPIs get out of whack? What are the ones that like are really kind of the ones that are going to crumble specific locations?
I mean, we've been complicit of it over the years, but if you have management turnover, labor can definitely get, a little wonky, right? Because like now you may have a new manager who's still getting, settled in, and like we have to, also make sure that we're helping them train and develop, and we're deploying more resources into that store to make sure that that manager has enough time to get fully acclimated, but also we're not giving them the same labor requirements as a seasoned manager,
Right.
that we would give. So labor is one of those that can I would say will run away from you the fastest if you don't have your eyes on it, because what a manager may not understand, in terms of like, hey, what does a labor cost really look like? They just may be a little bit more skewed because they don't realize the taxes we pay on top of the labor costs, percentage and things like that. So like all in labor, it's still about 5 to 6% higher than what they're seeing on maybe their P&L.
And are you mainly tracking it as a measurement? You're kind of attaching managers to labor as a percent of revenue and really like on a weekly cadence, kind of pulling that and keeping your teams dialed and focused on that?
Yeah,
Is it
so
that element?
we include the manager compensation in labor, what they got to control and manage. And once we started implementing that, we've had a lot better success with them knowing, okay, like, hey, I am part of this. And we like to find managers who are, true leaders, who are boots on the ground, who's hip to hip, working with our team members, training, developing, and setting that example of how do we run things at Vale. We don't really do well with managers who are just on their computer and pointing at like, hey, do this, do this.
Yeah.
No, like that's not going to fly with us.
Yeah.
Like we, as a concept, we're a lot more cumbersome than that.
And so now there's 10 restaurants, right? What are you, I'm assuming you're analyzing kind of each one as its own, like each one has its own, a financial set of analysis that you have for them. When you're looking at that per restaurant measurement, right? Are you, do you try and keep each location the same size, the same staff, and so on, or could they vary? So, when you're comparing what's performing well or not as well, it's other data points that you're looking at. When you're looking restaurant to restaurant, how are you kind of thinking through that?
Every market is different, and every restaurant is a different set of economics, and that's how you have to view it. Because ultimately, like if you're, like they say in restaurants, location.
Yeah.
That plays a big part of your success, your sales. So, if one store is at a certain level and another that's doing like more medium level sales and one's doing high volume, how you manage each one is different. High volume, and it's a true thing. Running a busy store is a lot easier than running a slow store.
Yeah.
So you have, because 20%, if you want a 20% labor cost, 20% of a higher number, you have more staff.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that now moving forward, we have a more dialed in approach to where like, okay, we want to have 1,800 to 2,200 square feet for a Vale, and we want this many seats, and we don't want it to be so big, I would say, from a dining room standpoint, but enough seating to where people can have an elevated experience. In the early days, we kind of scaled a little aggressively with taking on big spaces, and I feel like now, like in hindsight, like we didn't need to, and we still have them, and like they're beautiful restaurants, but it's not really fit for our model moving forward. Like now we figured out our perfect size footprint for scale. The early days of our restaurants we were still figuring it out.
Yeah. And I guess now I'm also thinking of the first thing that we were talking about of like, you guys want to keep investing into like high quality personnel and so on, but also the labor is the biggest thing I can get out of whack, right? The balancing, like that's gonna be a tough balance, right? Because you saying that that's the area that gets most out of whack, my mind goes to, maybe leaning into like more automation minimizes, like protects your downside a little bit more. But even with that in mind, like you still believe that that's really a way to have an edge in kind of the direction that makes the most sense.
I look at it like this. I'd rather pay someone who is $18 to $20 an hour who's equivalent to two people at 13 or 14. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
so they can make a better impact, and they're actually more affordable for us. You know, if we find those people who are those high performers. And we'd rather reward them and pay them to work at a Vale, where they're really giving us more at the restaurant. And also, you know, you want people who are really going to be selling your product to the guest, who's also going to be helping grow that guest from them coming in and just buying a bowl to also buying some of our other items and goods. And for me, that's something that pays dividends in itself. You know, if you have high quality staff who are, I would say, giving a more elevated experience, and they can lead to higher sales in themselves. And we've seen it. You know, we've run contests where we do gift card contests and different things like that. And we've had, you know, it really is apparent which employees are like very motivated once we tie in incentives. And they generate, I've had a girl generate thousands of dollars in gift card sales. And it's crazy. But and we never thought, you know, that, hey, this individual would do that. You know, but when put into the right environment and setting, they can perform. So I look at it as like, we'd rather pay more people like that and look at the net positive effect of sales that they can create.
And I definitely get the concept of like if you actually focus on higher quality people. And this doesn't, as an operator, I understand this. This doesn't resonate with people sometimes, but it truly is like, oftentimes you might have a team of 10 and you can really do it with a team of 5 that, yes, might cost you more on an individual level, but net actually costs you less. And the output is going to be significantly higher, right? So if you're able to kind of separate where maybe the entry level at Vale is higher caliber, also pays better than the entry level at a competitor, and you know the thought of like differentiate via the people, right? Because the people are ultimately, with such a people focused business, the people are the biggest ambassadors, right? So I like that concept. I think sometimes easier said than done, but it's a way to differentiate.
It's tough. I think people is probably one of the main things we focus on a weekly basis. Like I tell my team all the time, if we just hire 1 to 2 really high quality people every week, like in a month's time, like we're really transforming the company. And I really like, I've always been from day one, like I tell people, like we're recruiting 365 like days out of the year. Even if we're fully staffed or good, we're always recruiting.
You want to find great people.
Yeah.
In maybe the answer will be different than the direction that we're going in, but one of the things that I think about is, you know, in my businesses, there oftentimes were signals that would happen kind of on the front end of the operation that I knew if those continued would cause downstream and bottom line impacts maybe in 2 quarters or a quarter or 2. And one of the things that I think of is I feel that oftentimes in business, people that haven't come from the operator side, they're not paying attention to some of these early signals that might not exactly be in the financials. Like they may be somewhere, but we know that, you know, if those continues, that's going to lead to whatever issue downstream. So my question for you is what are maybe some of those signals or data points that you use to stay ahead of some of these larger issues that could be like brewing at a, you know, again, you might not see it in February financials or March, but
KPIs will tell you everything.
Right.
Let me just tell you that. So for us, like that is like the general compass of like how we're navigating and how we're leading the restaurant into a stronger, better, you know, company every day. Because one, if you look at the KPIs of like our food costs and labor costs, if 1 week it's really good, the next week it's really out of whack. To me, that volatility is a sure sign of like, hey, this individual is not dialed in on knowing how we're properly supposed to be ordering. You know, we now have checks and balances in place to where we have a secondary review of all orders to, you know, authorize and saying like, hey, now, yes, we can place this order. Whereas in prior years, we didn't have that.
So somebody would order and it would execution would start basically. Now you have like, it comes in a verification step basically?
Correct. Yeah, my director of culinary verifies the order, checks it, makes sure that it's in line with that store's budget,
Okay.
and then authorizes it.
I see. Some of a quality control kind of aspect of it.
So we have that as well. But there's also reviews. If we see a store and they start to get an influx of negative reviews, that is a clear indicator something is going on at that store. And that is usually the first sign. And I appreciate it, even when customers do leave us that, because it helps us isolate a problem.
Yeah.
So that way we can correct. And look, through the scale in the early years, like, the bootstrapped approach of growing a restaurant chain is god awful, terrifying levels of volatility. And there's definitely been times where we have, had that happen. But it has helped me navigate and say, okay, we need to really fix this right now. And we've deployed support and we figured out ways to get stores back on track for the guests.
And so it sounds like it's really a matter of making sure there's that constant attention on the KPIs.
Yeah.
How do you know that, like one of the things I experienced is I always had the attention on it, but there were phases I went through where I realized that I was maybe there was a data point that should have been more prevalent that wasn't as prevalent. So how do you make sure you're looking at the right KPIs, right? There's obviously the obvious ones, but
No, everyone has to go through this like the hard way.
Yeah.
Everyone has to learn the hard way on KPIs because like if you're a little analytical or cranial on like results and performance, like you sometimes as an operator, you can get obsessed on a KPI.
Right.
And then you neglect some other ones where are very vital and important. And for us, like we went down that road where like we were very obsessed with our food cost and reviews one year. And like we really wanted to focus on that. And then we found out, okay, we were so focused on food costs that we had some stores running too tight on product and they were running out of stuff. And I was like, no, they're doing it the wrong way. So we created a culture where that was, something that they thought was helping us when they were hurting the guest. So then we found better ways to kind of manage that KPI. And we, there was, other ones too, where while we were focused on those two, labor ran out of whack because we were so hyper focused on those two. So then, there's months where we were like, okay, oh my God, we can't believe we spent this much on labor and we just didn't have enough disciplines on there. I would say now, like we have with my corporate team, we have a pretty good control on all of our KPIs and everyone's kind of owning their own per se. And I'm generally overseeing all of them and seeing trends. Like one of my biggest things is year over year sales comparison. How is the store's growth in sales year over year? Looking at this day versus the day, a year ago. And for me, like seeing positive momentum on that is a big indicator of like, okay, like we're growing the store. But in general, I would say my team is very dialed in on KPIs.
On KPIs aspect.
Yeah.
Yep. So I want you to take the position of an investor, right?
Yeah.
I know you guys haven't raised capital. Maybe at some point you will. Many of the competitors, either that are private, have raised capital, and obviously the public ones are public equities. What do you think, as you've looked at the landscape on these companies that have had other capital injections? Where do you think, what do you think investors get wrong about the industry?
How Wall Street analyzes restaurants, pretty simple, right? Wall Street is coming in and they're looking at what is your average unit volume? How many units do you have? What is your sales growth year over year? Those are like the big three. Obviously, total revenue and profit obviously are the ones that matter. How much net profit are you bringing in on a per store basis? And how many units are you opening per year? They look at those pretty run-of-the-mill kind of cookie cutter stuff on growth. But what I don't think that they really understand, or like how some concepts do is like, obviously like growth is expensive.
Yeah.
There's no other way of saying it. Whether you're a publicly traded equity and you're scaling, because restaurants are so people dependent, growth is expensive. You need more layers of having a area, a district, a regional support to make sure that these stores, when you're running 10 stores, is completely different, the scale and structures and the organization that you need versus 1,000.
Yeah.
So like, I think they don't understand that sometimes young brands that go public or young brands in general are spending an unbelievable amount of money to stabilize through that growth to make sure that they can compete with the other big dogs, right? Where like Chipotle already has that infrastructure. McDonald's has that infrastructure, these other companies. So it cannot be an apples to apples comparison when you're looking at an emerging brand, like a young brand, versus those, ones that have been here and already have had 100 years, 30 years, head start on, building out those layers. But I think that has probably been one of the most, missed, kind of points because growth in general, me just going from 1 store to 10 stores, now I have to think like any new appliance that I invest or put into my concept times 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I'm running a Chipotle, I'm like times 4,000.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, no, now I understand why they don't have the same ovens that I do. And I'm like, man, and now I think in my head, like scaling to 100 units. And, for us, like that's my goal is to be able to scale this brand to 100 units. We want to make sure that, we're working with the right investors who understand our vision for how we plan on going from 10 to 100 and also understanding that there's going to be parts of that growth journey that takes time for us to be producing the results that we need to bring to the bottom line. And I think Sweetgreen's been a good testament of that. They've been scaling pretty aggressively. I think they went public at like 200 stores or so. And now they're growing pretty steadily throughout the US. And they were really slammed hard by Wall Street early on into their, IPO days. And now they've recovered and they're starting to produce some better results and things. And it's one of those things where these younger brands need time to really settle in. And they're still they're not as well known as like a Chipotle per se, but these young brands need time to produce the same type of results that some of these other, fast casuals are. So you can't just always do a peer-to-peer, just a pure KPI, analysis, on them.
Yeah, because the growth, I mean, good thing for you guys opened up, 3 last year?
Yeah.
Like, there's the upfront capital, even like get a new location going, and then, well, maybe share a little bit, like what, as much as you can, the startup costs, how long does it take to turn a profit? Like, what does that world look like of getting a new location up and going?
Yeah, for sure. So like every location differs. Like if you're going from literally dirt to a restaurant for a Vale, like that can be anywhere from $1 million to 1.3 million, depending on the construction costs, the city and everything that's involved. I've done it before more frugally, but you don't want to cut a corner when you're opening a restaurant. When it's a second generation restaurant, you can do it probably closer to 700,000, or 600,000 to 700,000 on a second generation restaurant. But those are tough because like you're not always getting it to be the exact fit for your concept and brand. So you have to make some modifications and some, kind of deviations maybe from like what your brand standard is. But in general, from a return on investment standpoint, it depends on the operations. If you have a great manager and you're running a good operation, I would say by year 2.5, 3, like you should be able to probably year 3 you should be able to recoup your investment back. But it really has to be those disciplines. And what a lot of people don't understand is that the first 18 months of any new restaurant is volatile sales. Where you're in your honeymoon phase, you're brand new to the area, you're still building your regular clientele and your business. So you're gonna have this. You're gonna have this up and down a little bit. And you want it to be always like right out of the gate strong and things like that. But I've been part of stores where right out of the gate super strong. And I've been out of stores where we got to really fight to grow the store sales. And then it gets to where it needs to be and we really grow and we take off. But there has to be a certain level of patience in that process where like, it's not just, hey, I'm opening a restaurant, I expect this thing to start printing money for me, you got to be mentally prepared when you put yourself out there to be open in the public arena. you're opening yourself to criticism. You're opening yourself to everything.
Right.
And as an operator, you need to be open to the mindset of this thing really taking off and being successful, and also the opposite. You need to be mentally prepared for it not to be successful. And and every concept knows this. Anyone who's disciplined in operations know, you can't look at one successful store you have and treat a brand new store or another store to that same set of economics. Because they're not the same.
And how, I guess up to this point, how have you guys, I mean, you guys have bootstrapped this, so how have you capitalized the expansions that you guys?
So for us, it was extremely scrappy. Insane amount of scrappy. We did take out some loans, we paid back loans. We took out, they were not sizable, but we were able to get, as we became more established as a business, we were able to get some SBA loans. We were able to, really kind of navigate our growth through that. And of course, we parlayed, a lot of our profits into new stores. So, now this year, we're really looking at it as, hey, we have our 10 stores. We're going to focus on running the very best financials, operationally, really focus on these 10 and nourish them, stabilize, and go to the markets to, do our first formal raise.
Awesome. Yeah. Getting to 10 in the way that you guys have is wild as is. I had a question here, I think I know the answer, but my question was, what's the central risk to understand and get comfortable with in your business from the space of an investor? In my gut, based off of what you've said, is the scaling and growth side of it, right? Would you agree, or would you answer that in a different way?
A concern, I would say. It's really with restaurants, once you get to a certain size, it is copy and paste. But there's timelines of understanding that these things take time. If somebody dumped X amount of million, on our laps, we still have a construction timeline, a expansion timeline that we have to meet. Just because we have the capital doesn't mean we can deploy all of it right away. There's still a lot of due diligence that needs to be done personnel-wise to make sure that you are equipped with the right personnel to handle that scale, right? Because there's no point in me opening 10 stores next year if we don't have the right support operationally and infrastructurally to make sure that those 10 are dominant openings for the public.
Yep. And is my take would be there's so much, given that rent is expensive and labor is obviously a big aspect too, but your choice of location of restaurant and the size and the dynamic and so on is probably one of the most critical decisions you make when you're expanding, right? So how much diligence and what's the strategic side of deciding where you're going to open, the size that you're going to do, and so on and so on and so forth? What's the strategic approach there?
I would say for us, primarily in the early days, we didn't have an approach. We didn't have leverage. We didn't have anything. When I was scaling to Gainesville, I had one store in Tallahassee, and they're like, we barely were able to get a deal done. He's like, you don't have any credit as a business. He's like, you don't have. He's like, you're a startup, unbelievable level. He's like, I don't even know how you're going to pay for this. And I was like, okay, I don't even know either. But in the early days, it was very I wanted to be very, I would say, conservative with the economics of what is our overhead we're getting into, to make sure that I was like, okay, I don't know everything, but when I was younger, I would think I know I just don't want to put us into an environment that was we're lopsided in terms of chasing rent or chasing these things. So for me, from a scale standpoint, we kind of scaled in the early days where we felt like we would have where we had populations of our prior customers and things like that. So in college markets essentially now feed into our metro markets. So us having presence in Tallahassee and Gainesville, people know us as that brand, at UF and Florida State. So for us, we went to Tampa, and our first customers in our building were FSU alumni and UF alumni. Same thing in Jacksonville, same thing in Fort Lauderdale. We had our first, and they kind of spread the word of mouth, the marketing.
So you sort of leaned into your initial customer base. Yeah. I'm an
Correct.
FSU grad. Like we're so many people from FSU and UF live in South Florida. Like
Exactly.
that probably is a strong catalyst to help grow in these areas.
So I did that, and then I would say in South Florida specifically, like in this last few years, as we went from 1 to 5 units down here, we, same thing. We wanted to go after key markets here in South Florida that we felt were like big, important markets for us, where it had enough of our target audience as well in there, but also, we felt like we can make a big impact in that community. So for us, Brickell, Miami has a ton of really nice, elaborate restaurants, but their fast casual scene in 2021, 2022 was lacking. We since then have had many competitors open, and luckily year over year we're still growing in sales, and we haven't had any laps. But we saw that as we saw the early signs of Brickell really taking off, and we wanted to be a part of that. And then same thing, Delray and Pinecrest, we look at that as market share. We look at that as like, hey, these are very affluent areas, but working dynamic areas where we feel like these communities can really benefit from a Vale.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm thinking like, of these other competitors, what they've done. It seems like many of these have also gone the franchise model route. You guys haven't. All 10 are corporate owned. Do you see that changing?
I can't say that I'm interested right now.
Okay.
For us, I feel like keeping it corporate makes the most sense with our long-term vision, of wanting to take the company public, of wanting to, kind of scale that way, because it really comes down to, we are a little bit more cumbersome as a concept. We want to put our, I don't want to put I don't want to put anyone or give anyone the keys to a car they can't drive. For us, we know how much goes into running a Vale, and just because you have the money to run a Vale doesn't mean you should be running a Vale. So for us, franchising is not really in our short-term time horizon. I'm not the type of person that says no forever. But things can change. If we found it to be a unique value add strategy for us, we can pivot and change. But at least for right now, I feel like we're making so much compounded progress running these corporate, and we can control everything at a higher level. So it's working out, this strategy, and we're kind of emulating Chipotle and Sweet Green's all corporate, and I believe Kava is as well. And we see that there's a lot of benefits to that scale and control.
Yep. So I have a couple last ones for you. One of the things I'm curious to get your take on is, in a business where there are so many variables, how are you, what's your strategy when it comes to the variables outside of your control, like the economic environment, inflation, consumer spending, interest rates, and so on and so forth? How do you guys maybe hedge against some of these potential risks?
I mean, it's pretty tough because all of these things impact food. If you're talking tariffs, right? Like tariffs can affect avocados coming in from Mexico, and we use a ton of avocados, at our restaurant. So there's going to be ups and downs, but I think at the end of the day, every concept, every brand, if you're dialed into your financials, you need to really be able to see okay, we may need to make a pivot. If the cost of something on our menu is just crazy, accelerates, it gets inflated, we need to make a pivot. We may need to move away from that product. And for us now, we're a seasonal restaurant. So 6 months out of the year, we run one menu. 6 months out of the year, we run another menu. So that also has helped us seasonally kind of reduce certain costs with working with produce that's in season, to where it's advantageous for us financially too. But also, those are certain hedges we've kind of put in place, but it's also been a value add to the guest, because now customers coming in throughout the year, they're getting different stuff. They're seeing new stuff. So if you're my guest that comes in every day for lunch, at least you're getting new stuff, and you're excited to see some new things on the menu versus just the same thing at Chipotle every day.
Right.
But from as far as interest rates and all those things, I think that it's important to kind of move your brand, and I don't ever want to, I guess, price us out of not being able to do business with everyone, the 99%. I always want to have things that are economically viable for the general masses of the population, but we also need to price ourselves accordingly with what we feel like is going to be sound
Yeah,
economics.
yeah. It's one of those things where it's like it's going to happen in one way, in the manner that the
Yeah.
economy goes, and um, you have certain financial marks you have to hit no matter what. So your price at times are probably going to have to adapt for it. But to your point, it's how do you keep the like how do you keep the customer at the forefront and continue to correlate with like you're saying, you guys catering to this broader
Yeah.
audience? Because if you get too priced out of the market, then
Of course.
they start to rethink, well, what is Vale actually? What is the brand in itself? Interesting. Okay, take me 5 years, across the next 5 years. How do you foresee this industry evolving and adapting?
I think you're going to see a little consolidation in fast casual. I
Mm.
think you're going to see some concepts that may not be bringing enough value to the guests and the general pop, probably go away. I think that there's going to be more evolution too. I think that, competition breeds, more competition,
Yep.
so we have definitely benefited from competition because it has forced me to evolve my brand. It has forced me to step it up, in our own ways. And America's always been, survival of the fittest kind
Yeah.
of, landscape. We love winners here. So I think that in the next 5 years, I think restaurants have always been historically kind of behind on like AI and like those type of things.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start getting some benefits of adding certain parts of that. Maybe that technology really helping, the guests from a customer service standpoint and different things like through websites and digital, kind of standpoint. But in general, in the next 5 years, I think that restaurants are going to be like, fast casual is probably going to be one of the more prevalent, that you see. I know from landlords that I talk to in commercial real estate, they are so keen on fast casual because of this. They really look at it as like based on our square footage, how much sales we do.
Yeah.
Hey, you do $1,000, $2,000 a foot, in sales, and they value that because you're like, okay, this is a more defensible tenant than someone who's taking 5,000 square feet, who's doing, maybe less in sales
Yeah.
or something like that. So, I think the future is very bright for fast casual, restaurants. But yeah, I think competition is fierce, and like there will be some sort of level of consolidation.
Yeah. I mean, I think in any industry, right, as it grows, there's natural consolidation that happens. And I mean, the way we're looking at it, like my partner and I, we're the value guys. Like we see some of these, we look at all the different industries, but I look at some of these publicly traded companies in your industry, and there's sometimes I'm like scratching my head, like I'm trying to understand and justify some of these costs. And don't get me wrong, I'm a consumer. I'm like healthy fast casual. I think it's like our whole world and society. We're drinking less, we're caring more about longevity and all these things, but it seems questionable from somebody in your position and your background. What do you agree? Like, what's your outlook on the current kind of values in them, and yeah, what's your take on it?
Without calling out any specific
Yeah.
brand, I mean, there's definitely been some multiples that are very extreme.
Yeah.
But it all depends on that brand's outlook with how many units they plan to deploy. And obviously markets are always forward looking, and if they have the trajectory and numbers to back it up, earning after earning after earning, hitting and beating guidance, I get it why someone can be a little bit more ultra bullish and create that value, proposition where a concept could be trading at 30x bottom line,
Yeah.
a store, that like I've seen literally, where stores are valued at like there's concepts where it's valued at like 30 to 35 million per unit.
Yeah,
And that's very large.
Yeah.
It does benefit us because we're in
Yeah.
that same sector, but and we do believe that this is like it's going to be the most impactful part. It's the most impactful part of the restaurant industry is fast casual right now because, like I said earlier, we're living in the busiest times ever. Like, we're living where people have the attention span of 6 seconds, 10 seconds, and time is really has emerged as the most valuable currency.
Yeah.
Right. So like if I go to a restaurant and it eats up 45 minutes of my time, an hour of my time,
Yeah.
I'm kind of ticked off.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like pissed.
Especially if you're not planning for it. Like, that's
Exactly,
not
if
what
you're
your
not
intention
planning
is. Yeah.
for it. So for me, like speed is, as a consumer myself,
Yeah.
like speed is important. If I go somewhere, like I even do this, my friends know. If I go somewhere and it's even if I am planning a little bit more time, I'll put a timer on. If I haven't gotten served in like 5 minutes, I'm out.
That's mad funny. Awesome, dude. Well, dude, I really appreciate the time. This was like super insightful. You're kind of, it's always really fascinating to me to get the inside lens of like, the investors can be like, oftentimes are so far from like what's actually going on that I understand it as an operator, but it's great to hear somebody in this space like give a little more of that like behind the scenes lens. Maybe the last thing for anybody that is listening, tell us what are you most fired up about this year for Vale, and any other things that you think and want people to be on the lookout. You mentioned potentially raising capital, so whether it's that or something else, but yeah, I'd love for you to share with us.
I mean, just talking concept wise, overall, like there's so much rampant innovation happening at Vale behind the scenes that so many people don't know about. Like throughout all my corporate team on a store level, where we are working night and day to make the product superior, making categories even better, launching new, ingredients and products. I think that's a very exciting, piece like that I'm always very passionate about. Like we recently launched our own supplement line. So we
sick.
have our own protein powders now that consumers can buy in our restaurants.
Vale protein powder.
Vale protein powders,
okay.
Vale grass-fed collagen, Vale, supplements. So, and we're going to be leaning into that to be more of a lifestyle brand, where people can come in and trust our products.
It's almost tackling the whole other part of the
Exactly.
another industry almost.
Yeah.
To some degree.
So and that's what we're always we're really focused on, that kind of innovation. I think that's a core part of our DNA.
Yeah.
And then me personally, it's nice to not feel like, from a scale standpoint, we have 10, we're really focusing on these 10 this year, and we want to make them as to the best, as we can. So for me, like it's nice to not be in like the mindset of expansion and just operate. But as we now kind of march towards, our first real capital raise, I'm very excited to get the brand out there to really find who's going to be that right strategic partner who understands my vision for this concept to scale, and who's going to really get us to that next, juncture where we want to, really set the foundation this year for future scale in 2026 and 2027 beyond. And hopefully, within the next, I would say 3 to 5 years, we want to have another 10 units in the state of Florida. So for us, we're doing that infrastructure ground lay work now this year to get ready for that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really exciting. This whole journey has been, for me, I'm super fired up to be in this spot.
Yeah.
Because not everyone gets to this point.
Yeah.
And for me, the fact that I see guests that, I see them fired up.
Yeah.
About our food and our product, and they're seeing it get better. Like it gets addicting.
Yeah.
Like some people, they get addicted to growth, and growth is sexy for all restaurants, all companies.
Totally.
Growth is a drug in itself. But for me, like seeing that value coming in from my community, the Vale, our customer base, has really filled me up and fired me up to where, if you asked me several years ago, are you ready to do a raise? I probably would have said yes. But internally, we probably were not ready. Whereas now, I can look you in the eye and I can say, we're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exciting, man. Well, I'm stoked to watch this journey, be any little part of it that I can, whether it's annoying feedback or whatever it might be.
I love all feedback.
Yeah. No, it's been awesome. I guess last thing for people listening, where can people follow along with this journey, your journey, Vale journey? What's the best place to follow along?
Honestly, our Instagram at Vale Food Co. is our Instagram handle. We post all of our content, primarily through there. I'm bopping around at all of our restaurant locations. You may see me at one of them, but for me, primarily, it's our Instagram or is our primary kind of channel for getting information out, or a website.
Awesome. Well, Sunny Ilyas, everybody, founder and CEO of Vale. Appreciate this time, man, and super excited to see where this goes.
Thanks for having me, brother.
All right,
It's been a
cheers.
pleasure.
Yeah, man.